It's funny because the last time that I did a movie review where I felt this way was with what still is my favorite movie of the year, which is Sinners, but this was more of like something that was completely accelerated the same way. Now, you clicked on the title, so there's no need to have suspense of what I'm talking about. I went to see the movie The Long Walk today, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much I'm saying this in quotes because I did enjoy it, but I really did enjoy this movie. Similar to Sinners, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a second, I didn't really hear a lot about it until I'm talking about Sinners in this specific time, about a month before the movie came out. It started to ramp up with all these different little trailers on TikTok, and I saw the Ryan Coogler kind of explanation on how he was dealing with aspect ratios. So it got to the point where I really was looking forward to watching this movie, and I'm like, I gotta go and see this the first day it comes out. This was ramped up like 3 days in advance. No joke about on Monday, I started seeing trailers of this concept of the movie, which I'll get into right now. So I didn't know it at the time, but Stephen King wrote this. Basically, I believe it was the first movie he ever wrote way back in the 60s, and he wrote it under his pen name. So I wasn't really familiar with this because I'm not going to sit here and say I've read every single Stephen King novel, especially some of his early works, didn't know about it. So the premise of The Long Walk, I've seen a lot of people kind of making this adjacent to like a Hunger Games type of things, and I can definitely see where that's coming from. More or less, there is a dystopian society that was embroiled in a civil war, and it's now become a really poor country, and there's a totalitarian government. And very similar to the Hunger Games, they have contestants come from I think there's 49 states in this, but every state that's still there, and they have to go on a literal long walk. Similar to the Hunger Games, there's a lottery, a person is selected, and the whole premise is they have to walk at a certain speed. In the movie, it's 3 miles an hour, and if you stop walking for any reason, you're gone. They say you're ticketed, but what literally means is they shoot you in the head. Story is basically around these 50 young men going on this long walk. It's televised, there's little cameras there, and similar to the Hunger Games, people are watching and cheering people on. When I heard that concept, I said, wow, that sounds like a really enjoyable or fun watch. I gotta go and watch this movie. You know, it sounds really cool. So you know what? I picked out a Friday matinee ticket and went and sat down and watched it. And I'm gonna be honest, I got something that I just really didn't know what I was bargaining for. While it was enjoyable, it turned into a very emotional thing towards the end of the movie, and I really didn't expect that. And as much as I enjoyed the movie, it's kind of brutal at times, but also have to say, for something that I didn't know about until about 3 or 4 days ago, I'm pleasantly surprised and I want to talk about it. So here we go. If you are unfamiliar with how I format my reviews, I don't give away any spoilers or major plot points, but more or less I talk about things that I enjoyed, things that I didn't enjoy, and then things that I'm kind of like on the fence or wishy-washy on. And I'm going to tell you right now, before I get into this, I have way more pros than mixed or cons. I actually had to sit down. It's about midnight for me, and I had to sit down and think about things that I had to nitpick almost to try to find things that I considered cons of this movie. But all in general, if you just want the Cliff Notes, it's a good movie. I just wasn't expecting something like this from something that I found out about 2 days ago. But anyway, we will start with the pros. And the first pro that I have here, it is a clear, concise premise. It's not confusing to understand. The exposition in this movie before they get into the actual walk, it's about 10 minutes. You don't really need a lot of explanations or backstory, whereas again, I'm giving you just a parallel because I keep seeing comparisons to the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games sets up a lot more dominoes before they get into the actual game. This, it's about 5 to 10 minutes and they're right into it. They basically have a general played by Mark Hamill. If you know, he was Luke Skywalker, but he's done a lot of voiceover work and has become a pretty accomplished character actor after, the Star Wars thing. I can say thing means freaking Luke Skywalker. But he explains the rules, and even in that exposition, he's kind of like, I'm not telling you everything, but I'm giving you everything you need to know. They give you a couple of characters, they give you the premise of the race, and basically we're off. And most people these days, I think a lot of plots, they try to outsmart themselves or be almost too intelligent to the point where people can't figure out what the hell's going on. And now Tenet is obviously the other end of that spectrum, but a lot of times people are like, well, I didn't really get this. You'll get it, and you'll get it right away. So I give them kudos. It's very concise, and you'll know what the hell is going on, and you can kind of just follow along this movie right away. The next thing I have of a pro is that this movie wasn't afraid to answer I think a lot of questions that people would have that would be kind of weird. What I mean is, if you can go on this walk, again, you are not allowed to stop, ever. Doesn't matter however this long goes, there's no finish line, you cannot stop. If you stop, you get 1 warning, 2 warning, 3 warning, bang, you're gone. If you walk under 3 miles an hour, you're gone. I don't care what you have to do. So the first question people would ask, and even me walking into this, I'm like, what if I had to go to the bathroom? They answer that a lot in this movie. There's a lot of poop and pee, but it's a legitimate thing. They tried to kind of go with something as realistic as possible, and it answered a lot of those weird questions that people would have. Like, what if someone gets sick? What if somebody has to poop? Or what if somebody has to... And they answer them right away. Another thing I have here is a pro is the actors. I have to say, this is a very well-acted movie by a lot of characters, especially the main characters. Now, there's a lot of, considering there are about 49 contestants, I believe, there's a lot of fodder that you'll kind of figure out right away who the main characters are going to be. But everybody does such a good job in this that in the very beginning, towards the beginning act of this, you start having those people that, you know, just like most of these movies, you want him to go, you want him to win, you want him to go, and all of that happens. But all of these characters, they are so well explained through the plot that most of the time when they have these movies, they give these flashbacks where it's like, you know, they show you the flashbacks. There's only about 1 or 2 flashbacks, and it's with more or less like the main character. The other ones, they don't show you any flashbacks. They literally just tell you things that have happened in the past. Why are they here? And even though they're just doing this through spoken word, you really can feel the emotional pull with a lot of these characters where you're watching and you're like, yeah, something's not right with that guy. Or, okay, I can see why he's here. And that's just something that you have to give credit to the actors, because they're just words on a piece of paper, and they all do really well with it. Some of the characters that aren't in the actual race, but part of it, some of you may know Judy Greer. She's kind of a character actor that's been in a lot of like, you know, chick flicks and stuff like that. She always plays like the quirky friend. She plays a mother of one of the main characters in this, and she does such a great job. And she's not in the movie that much, but it's a very memorable role in my opinion. I didn't know that she had a bag like that, and she does. Maybe she needs to be given some more roles instead of being that quirky friend that's always like next to, you know, the other person in those movies. Also, Mark Hamill, like I said, and the main characters, there's the gentleman, the young man who played in Alien Romulus, also does a really good job. And I believe the main character is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son. Does a good job too. There's a lot of good acting in this movie, and because it's more of a character-driven thing, not a lot of CGI and special effects, it's just spoken word and emotion, they all do a really good job, and I have to give my hat off to them. Couldn't believe some of the stuff that was going on where I'm like, I'm actually feeling for these people. And the last pro that goes into that same thing that I was kind of getting on was that a lot of these characters, even the ones that you don't like towards the end of the movie, it gets to a point where you don't want them to go. And I just wasn't expecting that. Some of the layers get peeled back as time goes on. People get more tired. People get more exhausted, where it's like, all right, man, like, let's just get real and stop acting. And there's a point in time where like the veil is lifted on a lot of these characters, and it's a very strong emotional thing. And it's one of those things that, you know, going into this movie, that there's so many people, only one can survive. All these people have to go, and you kind of just like are hoping at one point that it's not gonna be that way. I think the movie is kind of trying to sell home that realism, but I just thought it was just really well done. I only really have one thing that I was like a little on the fence about, and I don't even really think it's that big of a thing. I'm being 100% forthright when I say I'm kind of nitpicking for these mix and these cons. The biggest thing that I mixed on with this is there's some things that happen in the movie that are, I think, just a little unbelievable, to the point, there's just certain things that happen to certain characters in the movie that I just feel like, no, I don't know how to explain that, but you're like, nah, there's no way that would happen in real life. Even like in a life or death situation, there's just no way that somebody would even have to, like, what happens if somebody gets injured or gets a cramp, or someone, you know, has the squirts? Some of these things are just like, nah, I just don't believe that. But again, it's a nitpick at this point. One of the things I did have as mixed, but I kind of took it off as I digested this movie, was I thought the characters in the beginning were a little like cookie cutter, in the sense of like, okay, well, he's the jerk, he's the hero, he's the sidekick, as time went on, they kind of like subverted all those things, and it went away. But I did want to say that if you're a person who's watching this in the beginning, you're like, okay, this person is the jerk, etc. I just encourage you to continue to watch the movie, because it does go away towards the middle of the film, and then definitely towards the final act. And the one thing that, again, I feel like is a nitpick at this point, but I noticed it in the movie as a con, and even with the crowd, I had about a half full crowd in matinee, which is kind of crazy considering I went to a 1 o'clock showtime, but there was a good amount of people there, is I feel almost like the payoff at the end of the movie for a lot of people, myself, knee-jerk reaction, but not so much now. I feel like people aren't going to like the payoff at the end of the movie. I heard a lot of groaning at the end of the movie. Now, please don't be wrong. I say groaning like, oh, like one of those kind of things as they started to roll the credits, because I think people may not like just the very end, but I think the journey of it was more the important part of the movie, which you're supposed to pay attention to. And the ending is just one of those things that it's the bleakness of the movie. It just kind of ends. Like, you felt like there could have been more to add towards the end of the movie, but they didn't. But I don't really see that as a con, because I think that looking back now, it's more about the journey of the movie, which to me, the journey was incredible. I think the set of the movie it's more or less you're walking on the road this entire time. There's not a lot of different sets because it's just like open field and road. And that's pretty much it. So it's more of a character-driven movie, and I really enjoy those types of things where you're letting the characters kind of make the film for you and bring that script to life. And I think all the actors, directors, and everyone that did it, ironically, the person who directed this movie is also the person who directed all but one of the Hunger Games. A lot of comparisons to the Hunger Games, I just don't feel like it does it justice, in my opinion, other than like the basic outline of the plot, because these characters are, to me, it's a lot more emotional than the Hunger Games, which the Hunger Games does have some emotion. I watched all of them and did enjoy them, but I think this one, it's a lot more serious than the Hunger Games. Not that spectacle that they have, in my opinion. It's a lot more grounded than that. So I see the comparisons, but I'm going to up the ante and say, like, yes, but no at the same time. But overall, I have to admit, this was a pleasant surprise of a movie that I think can be a little dark at times for sure, but it's also a very enjoyable movie to a certain extent. And now I'm saying that in quotes because I do think that it's a little depressing at times. It's a little sad at times, but it's grounded. And I think that that was the point of it, considering that Stephen King wrote this in the 1960s. Now, I know the adaptation isn't like direct. It's not like everything from book to page. There are some changes that they made, so I've heard. I haven't read the book, obviously. But either way, I still really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was good. I thought it was very good. I think I have to watch it one more time. I don't think this is a movie you can watch 50,000 times like that, just because of how dark it is. But I think I do have to watch it one more time. And in that case, it kind of reminds me of the movie Civil War that came out a couple of years ago in that same sense. You don't get a lot of backstory and what the hell happened, but you can kind of just feel what happened. But very surprisingly, I think this is my second favorite movie that I've watched this year. Again, this might be knee-jerk. I might change that. But other than Sinners, which I still think is my favorite, of the movies I've watched this year, I do think that this would be my second favorite. Yeah, it was really good. If you want a letter grade, I'm gonna give this an A minus. The only thing that keeps it from being like extra S tier, in my opinion, is the fact that I just don't think it has the same. I've watched Sinners like 10 times. I'm not joking with you. This movie I'll probably watch 2 or 3 times. This is a movie that I think that if I have some people that want to watch it, I'll turn it on again. It's that type of movie. But I'm pleasantly surprised at how well done this was made, and I think a lot of people are kind of echoing that sentiment. I haven't seen any reviews or anything at this time, but just by the crowd reaction and what I've seen just from like TikTok, you know, how like the quotes and movie of the, it's hyped, but it's good. It's good. So I wanted to talk about it. I am going to watch another movie. I'm going to see the Conjuring. I don't know why the hell I'm going to watch that movie, because I don't really care for the Conjuring, but people want movie reviews. It's spooky season, so it means it's time for me to get up and do this. Even though this is a Stephen King movie, this is more closer to like a Shawshank or like a Green Mile than like an It or a Cujo, by the way. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed, and we'll be back. No outro on this channel.